right, dudes, lock in. I got one for you today you're gonna like and I'm excited about. This is our third theme build on the channel. We started with the Berserker, then the Paladin, and today we have the Bloody Ninja. I think I enjoyed this one more than the Bladesinger Nightblade due to how weird and different it is. This is a high mobility, bleed and poison based setup where you'll be constantly dropping bloody poison bombs on enemies, triple stacking hemorrhage on everything with an absolutely insane healing kit where the more blood you spill, the more healing you get, up to a point where you're fully immortal outside of one-shots and mechanics. I enjoyed this one so much I cleared our Immortal tag test on the channel of soloing the 12-man trial boss St. Lothus in under 10 minutes 4 times. Veteran arenas were too easy, and I even went and knocked out a world boss solo for you here, as you can see, skipping all the mechanics and just muscling through with no problems. There is also 0 ground-based procs to deal with, like Nern and Aegis Caller, so you won't lose any damage with enemies shifting around the fight. And with a few small changes, you can take this and destroy veteran dungeons with a group and even some of the more basic trials, with it parsing well over 80k with the same bloody poison AoE setup. You in? Let's do it. There's some really interesting nuances in this one I'll cover quick for you here today, and I have the written guide up and available for you now over at thegameroom.tv. Let's go. For this build, I felt Orc fit perfectly with its increased movement speed, additional healing, and stamina-based stats. Khajiit is also great if your Nightblade is already that. Dark Elf will be the most damage overall, but any stamina-based race will work totally fine. Then we have all 64 attribute points in stamina. Before we go over gear, I want everyone to be clear on how our main status effect hemorrhage works. Over at the status effect guide at thegameroom.tv, which I'll link for you in the description, you can see hemorrhage has a chance to proc off bleed damage, lasts 4 seconds, and stacks up to 3 times, increasing in damage. The reason you don't see this very much generally is because most builds aren't able to proc this so consistently that it keeps stacked 3 times on targets. A single instance of it, and even 2 at times, isn't a ton of damage, but when you have 3 rolling on a target, it starts to get significant. And when you're able to stack this up on multiple targets, it gets nutty quick. As you can see here on our St. Lothus clear, it was our number 2 source of damage for the entire fight, and on our DPS version for dungeons, it's providing 4k additional DPS, which is very notable when you consider it's typically not something that even gets looked at. But the big thing is we're able to stack this up on everything all of the time with basically 100% uptime of triple stacks. To accomplish this, the first set we will be using is the Unleashed set, which has solid stam stats and applies a bleed and the hemorrhage status effect every tick of damage for 10 seconds when you do a blink, charge, leap, teleport, or pull. And we're going to take maximum advantage of this and make this an AoE effect hitting all enemies around us. Then we couple that with the Savara set, which has a super short cooldown of only 7 seconds, which is great for content as it can be reapplied very fast to new targets as the current ones die. You aren't waiting for very long proc timers. It explodes for a poison-based AoE damage over time effect to everything you hit. Let's pause this build overview for just a moment and let's talk about the glue that holds all this together and makes this work so well for the Nightblade. The class has the ability Lotus Fan, which allows you to teleport through the air, reappear at an enemy, dealing a burst of AoE damage, and then a second source of AoE damage with a magic damage over time effect to 10 seconds to all enemies, and applying minor vulnerability to everything hit, juicing all of your damage by 5%. So now look at this. Look at all this crazy damage with one single button press. 6 damage sources to everything with RNG, poison, and overcharge procs as well, and hemorrhage stacked up to 3 times and maintained after the 3rd tick on all targets. But wait, there's more. The Unleashed set has a specific cooldown element of 10 seconds per target being the big takeaway. This means you can just ninja around, spreading this nuke around endlessly, maintaining full uptime on everything you can see, and Savara's will do its thing every 7 seconds exploding. It's seriously fun to play, and that's just one button. We haven't even gotten started yet. Back to the overview, we paired those 2 sets with Oakensoul. A quick note here, yes, this can easily be expanded out to 2 bars, and I think I'm gonna do it probably on stream at some point. I was just too excited to get this version out for you today. Then we have a helm with a line of penetration like Krogs and double maces. Double maces because we don't have room for breach in our bars, so we band-aid that with more pen from maces, sacrificing a bit of crit. Side note on the maces, I don't know if this will work for PvP yet. I plan to test that on stream, but if it does, having double maces here is already a perfect transition for the setup. Traits and enchants are here for you. Mundus, food, and potions are here as well, and here is your CP. For abilities, we already talked about Lotus Fan. Siphoning attacks, this restores health, magicka, and stamina every second, as well as can be used at the cost of health to restore a chunk of mag and stam if needed. Our main spammable Bloodthirst, which is a bleed-based spammable that hits 4 times a second and heals you for percentage of the damage done. Also, with the Reaving Blow CP, all 4 hits also provide additional healing along with every other direct damage source you do. Blood Craze, this applies a bleed to an enemy that deals damage over time and heals you for the duration. In a multi-target scenario, this heal is significant. As you can see here on the St. Lothus fight, with keeping just 3 targets dotted for most of the fight, this ended up being our #1 source of healing. Just apply this to all the chunky mobs around you and bosses. And then the Nightblade staple, Merciless Resolve. After 5 light attacks, it becomes a proc for a huge burst of damage that also heals you for a burst heal and the Reaving Blow CP heal based off that burst damage. And then one of my favorite parts of the build, the ultimate Thrive in Chaos. This thing is super duper nutty in solo content. It blasts everything in front of you in a cone, applying a huge dot to them, more hemorrhage, which gets lost often due to the Unleashed set, but that's okay. Sometimes it helps out when Unleashed falls off for whatever reason. Then it heals you for percentage of all the bleed damage it's doing and increases your damage done by 6% per target up to 6 targets for a 36% damage increase for 15 seconds, which is so long of a time. And it only costs 150 ultimate, and with minor heroism from Oakensoul, you'll be getting this constantly. I want you to see this in any sort of multi-mob scenario. I'm going to press one single button and look at the damage and look at this healing. It's so many lines of healing the screen can't even keep up. With this one button, you're fully immortal outside of one-shots and mechanics. Now remember, this increases your damage by 6% per target up to 6. So this little pack will increase all of our bloody poison mess by 36%, which is enormous. Now look at our Lotus Fan together with this. Just 2 buttons. Bananas. Now, if you're only going to be facing one single boss with no ads and just one big chunky target, NCAP is going to be better here. But Thrive trivializes like basically everything. I used it to solo everything I did for the gameplay testing. So let's recap the healing here. Siphoning heals you every second. Your Bloodthirst spammable heals you for percentage of the damage it does, plus Reaving Blows heals from it. Your light attacks heals you from Reaving Blows. Blood Craze heals you for every target you apply it to. Merciless Resolve heals you for half of your health bar or a full health bar if it crits. You legit can go from 1 HP to full health with 1 bow proc crit. And that doesn't even include the decent Reaving Blows heal from it as well. Then you just ascend into superhero mode for 15 seconds every time you have Thrive up, and if you fall asleep at the wheel and press 0 buttons for its duration of 15 seconds, it's still going to keep you alive. All of that crazy goofiness aside, it's just downright fun to play. You feel like a bloody immortal ninja just leaping everywhere, blowing everything up. Okay, real quick before we wrap up with some gameplay, I cleaned up the group DPS build for you for veteran dungeons and whatnot. Here is that parse. You can see it was a bit under 83k, which is very good considering this is 1 bar and we're using 2 sets which nobody in the game would consider air quotes good DPS sets. And you still maintain all the leaping around and bloody poison bomb gameplay. So there's much more value here than just an 83k parse for single target because you're absolutely blowing up trash mobs with AoE at the same time. Here are those changes we made to accomplish this. We dropped Blood Craze for our Execute Killer's Blade, which adds a ton of DPS during the execute phase, especially with the bloodthirsty jewelry traits scaled up. You can also just keep Blood Craze if you prefer for more dots and heals and just lose some overall DPS. You'll be totally fine. We swap daggers for the weapons and swap our shoulder piece to light and then use a light slime crawl helm. All of that together is going to give us to as close to perfect parsing stats as we can get with the setup. Then we use the Thief Mundus, Lavafoot Soup for maximum damage, and then drop Reaving Blows for Exploiter for parsing, or if you have off balance in your group, or you can just keep Reaving Blows for a bit more self-healing while dealing damage, or something like Thaumaturge for more dot damage, or even Untamed Aggression for more weapon damage. This final CP slottable is very flexible. Last, you change the Bloodthirst spammable to the other morph Rapid Strikes. Side note, if you want more self-healing other than siphoning and bow procs, you can still use Bloodthirst here with a little loss in overall DPS. The rotation is very simple as long as you're light weaving. With keeping Lotus Fan up, use Resolve at 5 stacks, use NCAP as soon as it's available, and everything else is spamming Rapid Strikes. At around 20%, replace Rapids with Killer's Blade, and you'll see your DPS start to shoot up with Bloodthirsty and your executes. At 10%, stop using Merciless Resolve, and below 5%, stop using Lotus and only execute. It doesn't have to be an exact science. I didn't spend a bunch of time parsing and nailing it down perfectly. This may even be able to do a little bit higher than 82k DPS. It's not a trial progging guild. Just make sure you're executing around 20% generally and you're good. Dungeon bosses aren't going to be alive that long during execute phase. It's going to go really quick. A very important note, Unleashed can't be reapplied early, and its proc lasts 10 seconds, which is the same duration as Lotus Fan. So if you Lotus Fan before the 10 seconds expires, your Lotus timer and Unleashed timer will fall out of sync, and the early application will not refresh Unleashed. try to never reapply it early. If it happens here and there, it's fine. You'll fall back in sync on your next fan, or you can try hard it and double refresh it if you caught how early you reapplied it. But generally, just don't apply it early on a single target fight and you're fine. And that's it, gamers. This was a fun one. I'll leave you some gameplay so you can see it in action. If you try it out, I hope you enjoy it. If you liked the video or learned something today, do your boy a solid and like and sub. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.